Alrighty, in this next video, we're going to be learning about a couple different shapes. So we've learned about rectangles and then the fill, the border, the dashes, opacity, all that stuff with the rectangles. What we're going to learn now is 3 new shapes, and you'll kind of see how once you know one shape really well, you kind of know most of the others pretty well too. So as we saw before, just a little recap. Rectangles, you have to create a rectangle, you start by saying RECT with a capital R, and then you must, at the very least, provide that rectangle with an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, a width, and a height. And then it will create a rectangle with its top left corner at that XY coordinate, and then a width and a height matching the width and the height that you told it to do. After those 4 required things, you can, of course, add other extra things that you want. Fill, border, opacity, border, width, dashes, all that stuff we talked about in previous videos. But to start out, you have to go X, Y, width, height, and in that order. Then you can add the extras. The other shapes we're going to learn about work very similar. And the first one that we'll show is an oval. An oval works very similar to a rectangle, actually pretty much identical. An oval goes, I'll write a little comment here, X, Y, width, and then height. It's pretty much the same thing as a rectangle. It's just that instead of it creating a rectangle at those coordinates, it's going to create an oval at those coordinates. What I'm going to do really quick is these rectangles are going to kind of get in the way. Oh, it's giving me an error because I never finished giving the oval the information it needed to create it. But what I'm going to do really quick is I'm just going to go ahead and comment these rectangles out. So this is actually a cool thing to do. If you're working on something and you want to move something out of the way or delete a line of code temporarily, instead of just deleting it and then it goes away forever, you can highlight whatever you want to get rid of or whatever you want to get rid of temporarily. Or first you can always just toss a comment in front. But if you have multiple lines that you want to comment, you can highlight it, hover over this little text box over here, toggle comment button, and it'll just turn all those into comments. So that way we don't have those rectangles getting in the way of our screen. Though again, we're going to have an error because we don't have our oval being done. So let's go ahead and make our oval. I'm going to make it at the center. So the center is going to be at 200, 200. And let's make it a little bit taller than it is wide. So I'll make the width at 20, I don't know, whatever, and a height of 80. So when I run this, well, I've made an oval with center 200, 200. And if you look, I'll try my best to get this visible. The bottom of this oval is at about, looks like it's about 240 in the Y. And the top of the oval is at about 160 in the Y. Well, 160 to 240 is 80, right? 160 to 200 is 40, 200 to 240, another 40, that makes 80. And that makes sense because we made our height 80. The big difference for ovals from rectangles is that rectangles start at the top left corner is where your coordinates are going to go, right? You place the rectangle at the coordinates there, but it'll be the top left corner of the rectangle. The oval, these coordinates are the center of the oval. But then that also means that the height, it's going to go out in 2 directions from it. And the width will go out in 2 directions from that center, as opposed to top left corner, it goes down from that for the height. Or top left corner will go to the right for that for the width. That's about it for oval. And like I was saying before, once you have the required inputs for the oval, you can then put after those X, Y, width, height, you can then put a fill. And maybe I want to set my oval to be yellow. Now when I run it, I got a yellow oval. You could maybe add a border, right? I can add a border equals blue. All the stuff we had for rectangles, all the extras, work on ovals as well. So that's pretty cool, right? Again, and this is going to be very similar for most of our shapes. It goes location for the first 2, right? You need an XY coordinate for your location, and then a size for the width and the height in this case. If I want to make this wider than it is tall, well, I'll increase my width and maybe decrease my height, and that will now make it wider than it is tall. Bada boom. We're getting like an IKEA logo here. If I want to change the location of this thing, well, just think about what you should be changing, the X or the Y. If I want to move it to the right, maybe I'll take this to go from 200 to 300. So now it's going to be moved a bit to the right. If I want to move it up, you're going to be changing the y, and don't get tricked. Going up, you're lowering your y coordinate. So maybe I'll make this 100, and now it goes up a little bit, and our oval is conveniently out of the way so that we can now put our next shape in. The next shape works very similar to the rectangle and the oval. Just a tiny little difference here. This one next we're going to do as a circle. Circles are very similar to ovals in that they're both rounded shapes, but a circle only needs 3 pieces of information to go. It needs the x and y coordinates of its center, and instead of a width and a height, because an oval can be, like we saw, wider than it is tall or taller than it is wide, a circle is always the same distance all the way around, so it's just going to need a radius. To make our circle, maybe I'll make a circle at the center of the screen again with a radius of like 50. And if I run this, it'll make a circle. If I want to, I can make a circle out of an oval technically by just saying, hey, this 120, I'll make my width and the height the same, and then I created a fake little circle. This is really an oval disguising itself as a circle. It doesn't really make a difference right now. I actually often find myself using circles more as we move along just because it's convenient, right? It's only 3 things, x, y, and then a radius. Circles, same deal with circles as ovals. It can use fill, border width, dashes, gradient, all that sort of stuff. You can do all that. No, she's not here. So yeah, circles work exactly the same as ovals or rectangles with your extra stuff afterwards. The last shape, which is a bit different than the others, is a line. The way lines work is, well, a line, if you think about it, you can't just say one coordinate for a line. I mean, I guess you could if you made a line, you did it at the center, and you said the length of that line. But the way that we do lines here, and this is a much easier way of dealing with lines, is by taking in, and it might seem confusing at first, but believe me, you want lines to work this way, is they work by having an x coordinate and a y coordinate for their first point, and then an x and y coordinate for their second point. And then once you say those 2 points, it will draw the line between them. So you need an x1 and a y1, and then an x2 and a y2. So that's what you need to make a line. Let's play around with it. I'm going to make a line at, let's see, if I'm thinking about making a horizontal line, I'll just start in the middle in the x. Actually, if I want to make a horizontal line, if I start in the middle, now it can only go left or right. Let's start a little bit to the left. I'll start to the left of the middle at 100. But I will make my y 200. So I'm at 1 point, 100, 200, right over here. And if I want to make a horizontal line, I'll have to go further to the right. So from 100, let's go to maybe 300. But if I want it to be horizontal, to be totally flat like this, the x's are going to have to be, the y's are going to have to be the same, because that way it won't be going up or down at all. So let's go 200 here. Make a little line. Oh, look at that. We got like a silhouette of Saturn or something. 100, 200 for the first point, 300, 200 for the second one. This is where like an understanding of coordinates, x, y coordinates is going to really help you out. And if you're not 100% with them, well, that's okay. You can use these as like ways to practice and see examples of how coordinates work nice and easy. Let's say I wanted to make a vertical line. Well, to make a vertical line, the x have to be the same and the y's will be different. So let's make a vertical line here. I'll keep this at 100 and maybe I'll keep that at 200, but to make it vertical now, the x will have to be the same and the y, let's bring it down a bit, not 40,000. Let's just go 400 here. If I run this now, well, I've got a line that's at 100, 200, and then the only thing that's changing is the y, right? So the x's are the same, nice and straight vertical line. The y's are different, so you got a vertical line that way. If we want to make something diagonal, now we got to start thinking about each point. Let's say I want to move this to have the bottom go a little bit to the right. Well, to move it to the right, I should not be changing my y's. Let's only change my x's. For the bottom to move to the right, I want the second x because, right, this one is the bottom because my y is 400 there. I want to increase my second x. So maybe I make this 300, and all of a sudden you'll see oh, okay, I was at 100, 200 to start, and now I'm at the coordinate 300 further to the right and further down to go afterwards. That's about it for how lines work. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of, if you're good with coordinate grids and stuff like that, you probably are bored of what I'm saying. But I'm just giving you a way to kind of figure it out if you're not 100% with the coordinates right away. Because, you learn about it in math, but now you're actually using it, and you're like, oh, it works a little differently in my brain when I'm actually using it than just like, I'll go 5 to the right and 3 up, and now I'm at the 0.53. Like, we're using coordinates here, baby. Last thing I want to talk about lines. They have most of the options from before, are fills, borders, and all that stuff, but not all of them. Specifically, let's get into it. Fills still work. If I want to make this line, teal, I can still do fill, make the line teal. It is a different color, right? Not a very bright teal, but it's all right. I can also, let's see, I can also make a dash. So I can say dashes equals true, and now we've got a dash line. And the dashes work the same way as the other one. Instead of just saying true, you can set the size of your dashes and the gap, right? It goes size of dashes and then gap between each dash. So I can maybe make these really tiny dashes, like only 3, and then a big gap between each, like 20. And now it'll be more like a little dotted line as opposed to like a really dash line. Maybe I don't like having the gaps like that. Maybe I want to have some longer dashes with a little bit less space between them. Maybe we'll go like 8. And now you got a different dash line there. This is a little bit easier to see, I think, than our dash example from before. One thing that lines don't have is a border. A line is just a single thing. It doesn't have an interior part and an exterior part. It's just a line between the 2 points. So no borders allowed here. No borders. But you can make your line wider or thinner by saying line width. And this will allow you to set your line to be a bit thicker. So maybe I'll make it a line with a width of 8. And when I run it here, now we've got a thicker line. If I want to get rid of the dashes, just so we see just a line by itself, we can do that. And now we've got that thick line without any dashes. I think that's about all that I want to say with it. So now we've learned a couple more shapes. Now that we have rectangles, ovals, circles, and lines, we can start making more serious images here, right? You can still, by the way, if you want to make a line that has a gradient, it's okay with that. You can say fill equals gradient, and I can say, I don't know, yellow to, let's go like yellow to orange to blue, and this line will have that gradient. Lines get a little bit weird with their starting things, right? The gradient is still starting at the middle and going outwards. If I then switch this gradient to being like start equals left, it's going to go from that left point to the right point over there. It does it in a way that I think makes enough sense. But, play around with it, see what looks good to you. The fills, the borders, the line widths versus the border widths. We've now got rectangles require X, Y, width, and height. Ovals require X, Y, width, and height. Circles require X, Y, and radius. And lines require 2 sets of coordinates, an XY to start and an XY for the ending point. And then you just, after you have your required things, hit comma, add your extra things in afterwards. And if you're ever confused and something's not working that you think you should be working, you can always go up to docs and colors and you can just find oval or rectangle or line, and it will give you the detailed information about the required values, all the extra values that it's allowed to have, all sorts of stuff in the documentation there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't got anything else to say here. Let's keep moving and make it through Unit 1, because Unit 1, it's a lot of stuff, and then like cool things start to happen in Units 2 and further on. So get the practice. Please do the exercise. The only way you're going to get better at this stuff is by doing the exercises on CMU CS Academy. And then, yeah, let's keep on trudging ahead.